Nannuccio and His 15 Stepdaughters is a classic because it's giving a non-religious morality play and a commedia sort of remix, but it does it in a way that is fun and a good time.
Oh, These Times is a classic because you're always going to have to listen to your senile grandma complain about how life was so much better when she was younger.
Yes.
This is our history. This is our legacy.
Hello and welcome to This is a Classic, the Expand the Canon Theater podcast. We're your hosts.
I'm Gagarin, they, them, and a curator that expand the canon for the past 2 cycles.
And me, Teresa, she, her. I was the 2023 and 2024 Director of Outreach and Engagement with Expand the Canon, and I have been a curator with Expand the Canon. And we're here to introduce you to some plays by women that are classics.
Expand the Canon is a program that reimagines the classics, creating a legacy of storytelling with gender equity at its core.
Woohoo!
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I love doing that at a curtain speech. I always get a cheer.
Yeah.
Today, yes. Today we're getting into These Times. If you go to expandthecanon.com and you'll find this pitch for These Times.
If you're looking for a satirical comedy in which every character lives life in the panic lane, consider Catherine the Great's These Times.
I love that. Panic lane.
In the panic lane. They do be panicking. I realized we left out the best part of this. I mean, we're going to get into it, but the bitter old lady brigade that we've got going on.
As someone who spent so much of her life in the Deep South, they are still around. I'm here to tell you, 400 years later, they run these streets down south. So. I love it.
It's so true.
Well, yes. We'll also be talking about Nannuccio and His 15 Stepdaughters. So, since you're already going to be on expandthecanon.com, you'll find this pitch for Nannuccio and His 15 Stepdaughters too. If you're looking for a cousin of commedia with a razz on dads, Nannuccio and His 15 Stepdaughters by Sister Annalena Odaldi should do the trick.
Come on, razz on dad. So these are our 2 oldest plays in this cycle that we're running with, which is really fun. And I think both of them are coming from maybe austere women is the wrong way to describe them. But that's kind of how I picture Annalena Odaldi and Catherine the Great, as just being these very austere yet silly gals. These are both such silly, delightful, classical plays.
When I teach theater history in terms of these centuries, the power, places that women could hold very recognizable outward power would be in a nunnery. And of course, being a czarina helps a lot too. So,
running the country does some stuff for you.
It's good to be czarina. I mean, I don't hate it. But side note, I had been obsessed with Catherine the Great since the 4th grade or something like that. And I just learned when we discovered These Times, she was a playwright. And I was like, I'm here for it. And then that play is so fun, to your point, that these women have serious jobs. Being a nun is serious, being a czarina is serious, but writing kind of fun, farcical. And I think because they understood and held more power than maybe the average woman, they could recognize the farce in people. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So true. Because also they're both very uniquely situated in a place where they can really say whatever they want. Because who's going to check Tsarina? And also, who's going to check a really high up nut? Because it's she's a god, When we get into their bios, we'll hear a little bit more about the tightropes that they still had to walk as women in the patriarchal society.
Yes.
But that's one of the things about this place that is so delightful, is that the characters just get stretched to these just massive proportions. Because Annalena is coming from that Italian commedia background. She's really leaning into that in a way that I think is so special, because as like someone who has done work at commedia plays, you get to see the men be these like foppish, silly guys, but the foppish silliness is based more generally, and I feel like in Nannuccio it's so specifically pointed.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have that comedy that's still living in a super heightened place while being incredibly grounded in reality. I was just rereading the play this morning, and I was like, I feel like I watched this happen like on Duck Dynasty or something. You know what I mean?
I love that. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, both of these plays actually felt pretty grounded, even in their ridiculousness. But with her being a part of a religious order, she would have been very familiar with what we would call commemorative drama. They started off as like the cycle plays and the mystery plays, and then later on, evolved in some other ones a few centuries before her wrote these morality plays. To me, in my humble opinion, almost a mix of like a morality play, because I do think she is kind of commenting on the transactional approach to marriage. And so it's not ostensibly a morality play like Every Man or like Hildegard's plays, but I think it is sort of a morality in terms of being a social commentary, and I think her coming from that religious tradition, she would have read all those plays that preceded her. And then of course she would have been highly familiar with commedia. And so it's like you said, it's a grounded remix.
Legacy.
So can you tell me about what happens in this play?
Yeah. So we start off with our good friend Nannuccio. This is a fun play. It's written in verse, and Nannuccio comes out and makes this grand speech. He talks about he's going to go to Chiara, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, which is a religious complex in Naples. And he's like, yeah, I'm really friendly with this order. They like me there. I'm worth 500 liras. And I'm going to tell these folks at Santa Chiara that I travel from here to there. I'm free of impediments. I own a press and a wheel. I have all this straw and grain. What more do you need? Sold. And
sounds like my kind of guy.
I know. He had me at press and wheel. I'm serious. And so his stepson, Bacon Nero, enters, and Bacon is basically like, don't believe this game. He's just spitting some BS. And he describes Nannuccio as being mercurial, he says he's kind of ruled by the moon. And Nannuccio tells Bacon that he is really upset that Bacon's his stepson and would have preferred him more as a servant. Bacon tells Nannuccio that what he really needs to do is just go to the mountains and play the flute. Which I'm stealing that because I tell too many people to go to hell. So I'm like, you know what you need to do? You need to just go to the mountains and play the flute.
Oh my God, it's really the perfect send off. And it's so funny too, because it's literally like he's this stepdad who's like, I'm going to take all this stuff and I'm going to do all these cool things with it. And Beko Nero's and be like, that's like my dead mom's stuff. Also, you don't live alone. There are 16 kids that you married into this thing with. And like, you don't think that you have any responsibility or connection to us. That's
right.
Like that aspect of this I find really crazy, especially in the discussion of like men and their sense of familial responsibility.
Yeah.
And how he just immediately jumps from like, I don't gotta marry off my 15 stepdaughters. I gotta get me a new wife and I gotta make sure she's young.
Yeah. And that's why I'm actually calling it a little bit of a morality play, because it's also, it is a pretty strong indictment on people who don't take care of their responsibilities and put their own needs ahead of. And he's basically stealing from his wife's children. Yeah. So Beko reminds him like, hey, yo, all this BS you've been spouting about, I've got this, I've got that. Well, actually, that you technically really don't have it because that was left for you with the expectation that those would be my sister's dowries. Beko's tells him that he's going to go to the courthouse and review the wife's will. And see, this is so fascinating because she does not hold back on just like having Nannuccio blatantly lie to us. Nannuccio's like, there is no will. It'll be proven pretty soon that that's a blatant lie. So we see these two female characters come in, Pasqua and Nincia. They are two moms, and they come in. Pasqua's daughter's name is Nastasia, and Nincia's daughter's name is Fiorina. They begin the discussion talking about the challenge of finding good men for their daughters. And then Nencia reveals that she is going to marry her daughter Fiorina off to Nannuccio. And Pascal's like, yeah, you don't want to do that, sis. So it's like an open secret that Nannuccio is shirking his responsibilities to the stepchildren. And she points out that he has failed to find marriages and implies that he's also failed in other duties to his daughters. And then Nencia just tells Pascal that she's just jealous. She kind of regurgitates all this stuff that Nannuccio has been saying in the first part of the play about all the stuff that he has. She's like, he's only 30, he dresses so fine, Fiorina will have a good life. And Pascal kind of backs off a little bit. She's like, I don't want to fight with you. Fine, if you want her to, my family will bring some good stuff. We'll bring a tablecloth, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And Nencia, it was basically like, I don't even know if I want you there because you're going to probably say something to F it up.
And it's so funny to me because it's like Nancy is just so blinded by the stuff of it all.
Yeah.
She's just like, all the stuff we're going to get, like all of these resources and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, girl, this is your child. This is your child. You're just going to give her up. And it's again that idea of children being a way of transaction for just throwing your own collection of stuff. And children being treated as objects, especially by older people, which is something that we'll get to that in these times. But it's a theme that has become very glaring to me. Anyway, so Fiorina has been kind of uninvited to the wedding.
Pascal mentions that she wants Stasia to marry Bronzino, and Nancy is like, that's a bad choice. They don't really have it. His daughter, Marina, enters and she says, I don't know, Nannuccio, he's like decrepit, like quote, straight quote that he's decrepit, which I my heart just sank for her. And it really is, just on a side note, it really, when you have these transactional cultures, and especially the approach to marriage, then you realize the person who has no power in that situation is usually the young woman. And so she vocally says and gives reasons why she does not want this man, and it just falls on deaf ears. So everybody kind of re-enters. Nannuccio gives Fiorina like 3 purses of coins, and he's like, I'm doing so well, I don't even need your dowry and all this stuff. And Pasqua and Nastasia enter, and they have gifts for Fiorina, and then there's dancing, and then Nannuccio kind of calls everybody to order. He's like, okay, let's get on with it, we need to get married. But before it actually happens, Beko returns with his sisters now. His sister, Becca, is one of the daughters, and she vocally confronts him in front of everybody and says, you need to marry us off before you get married. And Beko actually leaves and then comes back again with the judge. And the judge does have the will and reads it and does confirm that what Beko and her sisters had asserted was indeed true. Nencia says she's going to send Fiorina to her uncle's house. She wants to get her out of this town. And Nannuccio just despairs that he's been thwarted. And he ends the last line in the play. Nannuccio's like, I just want to go away. So that's the sort of the end of it. And I like your point that you didn't have these arch characters as much as you have in commedia. And you had a more grounded approach. And to be honest, I can imagine that this scenario, again, with her being acquainted with all the younger women in the religious order, was probably not unfamiliar.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I can almost picture them all like reading it together and giggling at what could have been their reality, but they escaped instead into this place in a nunnery. Perhaps happily or unhappily for most of them, but certainly it's better than being married to some dusty old fart who just wanted you for the 3 cows and a nice tablecloth. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I also want to shout out the drama with which the judge is introduced, because when I was reading it, I was like, he seems like death. Like he comes in
I know.
on a horse with this big black robe and 2 people carrying torches on either side, even though presumably it's daytime when they're having this wedding. I also love when Nannuccio is like, okay, if you're gonna read the will, only read it loud enough so that I can hear, because I don't want anybody knowing the rest of my business. And then it's like the judge loudly proclaims, it's like, we got you. We got you. You're not slick.
He's just the epitome of a narcissist, where he's so self-absorbed that he just can't understand how he would be outed and discovered. It's wild.
It's amazing.
History.
Well, so tell me a little bit about Adalena.
Her birth name was actually Lysandra Odaldi. She's born in Pistola, Italy in 1572. So when she was 12 years old, her mother passed away. And her father married off the oldest girl and sent Lysandra to a Franciscan convent in St. Chiara. And that's when she took the name Annalena. While she was at St. Chiara, Odaldi performed many tasks. She did some bookkeeping. She oversaw liturgical celebrations. She assisted young nuns in their transition into religious life. And so, what we know about her is that she wrote 5 farces that were staged during a celebration known as Carnival. So, the celebration during Carnival, it takes place before Lent, and it's a time of indulgences. And there is a carnivalesque aesthetic where a lot of times you'll see exaggerations of body parts, like a phallus or oversized nose or different things like that. Or you'll see a time when the social order is circumvented. So those who would have been the ruling classes will be portrayed as the poorer classes or things like that. So Dolly wrote about the secular world, and some people think it might be because of her upbringing or just curiosities about this world. I think she had probably a high moral center, but didn't necessarily want to write it in the way that these morality plays were really written. Many of her male protagonists in the plays that she wrote are named Piero in some way, and that's the name of her father.
Ooh,
And
that's
so,
drama. That's tea.
yeah, all the tea.
I feel like that kind of speaks to what you were just saying, is that she probably had a lot of feelings about how her father married off her older sister and then just sent her
Yeah.
to a convent, and she probably saw and experienced a lot of things in the secular world as a young woman, and instead was processing probably a lot of that and a lot of her feelings towards men through writing these plays. And I think it's really amazing that she leaned into the carnival and the comedy of it and skewering them morally from a place of laughter. I think it's one of those forms where comedy is so much more of an effective tool for social and personal criticism than drama.
Yeah. Definitely, because like we said, she had a more powerful place probably than her sister. But still, she did not choose that religious order. It was chosen for her. And even with her having this level of power, she still would have been in a vulnerable position. And
Definitely.
and this actually, we've talked about Sor Juana, who is also a nun in Mexico. And when she challenged sort of the status quo too much, the religious heads who were male came after her and stopped her from writing. So it's a little bit like you can't hit head on sometimes. You kind of have to use comedy and farce and a little bit under the guise of the commedia guys, which it was kind of cool. Yeah, it was kind of cool that she was Italian because that was so omnipresent in terms of that popular entertainment that this would not have thrown anybody that much if they'd seen this play, because it would have been so similar to that commedia style that they would have been like, oh, okay, she's just writing a little cute play and not really realizing what she's really saying in it.
Very much a sniper from the side. It's like, it's the joke about it. A few days later, you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Is there a particular line or like a read from this play that you love or want to share with me?
I liked this line that I'm going to give you, even though it's really dumb from the villain of the play, but I still like it. It's so Nannuccio says, those who talk the most are listened to the least. And I was like,
I'm sure he feels that way.
Yes. And this is just when he's telling Beko to shut up. Like, shut up, dude. I'm sick of hearing you talk. But, just even if a bad character says it, I mean, it's still a good line. It's still true because there's so many times I want to tell people, like, no one's listening to you. Stop talking. But she's a fascinating woman in a fascinating play.
Legacy.
Should we dive into these times?
Yes, please. Oh, gosh, yeah.
Okay, so These Times by Catherine or Katrina the Great. I just want to shout out one thing really quick about this. All of the characters' names are obviously translated, but all of the names are originally Russian words that describe this character's core and put a little twist on it to turn it into a name, which she probably wasn't borrowing from a commedia tradition, but is something very similar that we see happen in commedia a lot. So the play takes place in the house of Madame Sanctimonious, already with the names. And the play opens with Marva, who is a maid of the house, and she's speaking with Mr. Not Shallow.
Yes.
And so she's telling him about her mistress, Madame Sanctimonious, who is a really bad boss. He's a really bad boss. Like, she's constantly beating up her servants over tiny little things. She's constantly dodging her creditors. And she does an insane amount of praying. Like, a lot of praying.
Yeah.
And so Marva's like, this lady's crazy. And Not Shallow is like, yeah, she is crazy. Because Not Shallow is here kind of as, like, the marriage broker, deal maker, representative of this younger fellow named Mr. Milksop. And so Mr. Milksop and Mr. Not Shallow have traveled to Moscow, where the play is taking place, from St. Petersburg, which is a pretty far way to travel in Russia during this time period. And they've been in Moscow for 3 weeks, waiting to talk to Madame Sanctimonious about having Milksop marry her granddaughter, Christina. Basically, Madame Sanctimonious will dodge the conversation at every possible opportunity, and continually will dodge the conversation specifically around a dowry, because she's always like, oh, I don't have any money. I don't have any money. How can I do it? I don't have any money. Even though she lives in this big house and she's constantly buying all of these things. It's very, I don't have enough money for my granddaughter, but I do have money for me.
Absolutely.
So
another example of someone shirking their responsibilities too, which is, it's so good that we put these two plays together because, it's really great.
Well, so it gets crazier because Marva disappears as Madame Sanctimonious returns, and Mr. Not Shallow is like, hey, can we talk about that dowry? And she shirks him off and instead starts talking about another servant she had to beat up, like literally just 5 minutes ago because he interrupted her praying. And as she's telling them about this, her sister, Madame Tatler, shows up. So a tattletale, obviously. And Tatler is just as bad, if not worse, than Madame Sanctimonious. And she immediately starts talking trash about Milksop and is like, this guy is a child. He's disrespectful. And all of this is based in the fact that Tatler met Milksop when he was 9 years old, when she went to go visit his parents' house, and he didn't say hello to her.
Yeah.
Because he was playing with his toys.
Right.
And off of that one instance, she said, like, he's the worst man ever, and you shouldn't marry your granddaughter to him.
The level of pettiness in this play is just amazing.
It's the bitter old lady brigade. And so Tatler and Sanctimonious are 2 of our 3 members of the bitter old lady brigade. The third one arrives just as Tatler is finished talking trash about Milksop, and her name is Mrs. Marvel. So she arrives, but she refuses to come into the room that everyone's in because she heard a cricket. And Mrs. Marvel is extremely superstitious and just basically like, if I go into a room where a cricket is, I'm gonna die.
Yep.
So all of the other 2 besties leave with Mrs. Marvel to go have their like hot goss section in another room. And Marva's like, all right, I'm gonna tell you, here's the secret for how we're gonna get these ladies to turn around. We're gonna give them money. She was like, that's how you change their opinion of you, is you just give them some cash, especially Tatler. And so as they're trying to come up with this plan for how to turn the narrative around, Milksop shows up, and he's lamenting that Christina, who is his potential bride-to-be and the granddaughter of Madame Sanctimonious, he's like, she's super hot, and he thinks she's totally great, but she, like, won't talk to him. He's like, I ask her questions, and she only gives me really yes or no answers. She seems really unsure. Like, the vibes are good, but we don't have any way to really communicate with each other. And Marva, and this is where it gets really crazy, is Marva's like, you shouldn't worry about Christina, because what happened was that Madame Sanctimonious has basically kept her granddaughter locked up in this house all of her life and never let her leave. She doesn't know how to read. She doesn't know how to write because Madame Sanctimonious has completely hobbled Christina in her education because she basically was like, you're not going to leave. Like, you're never going to leave. Like, she's like, I've got all this money from you for your dowry and all that stuff. And it's like, she doesn't do this necessarily thinking that, like, she's evil, but it's a pretty evil thing to do.
It's very evil.
Again, we have this thing of, like, your children, instead of being people, being resources.
It's also like that transactional point too. And it's kind of two levels. On a transactional level, it's because she's so darn cheap. She doesn't want to give up that money for the dowry. And so she realizes that she'll be able to hoard more resources and also hoard this girl. You know, I've seen, and this really does happen down south a lot and in other cultures too, where sometimes one of the female children is sort of like, her wings are clipped because the family sort of wants them around as almost like a company, or sometimes as a de facto servant. So
and it really gives that, especially in this place, because you really get the sense that the only person Christina really has is Marva, and Marva's talking to these two guys, and she's like, listen, don't worry about the weird behavior. She needs to get out of this house, and she needs to have somebody who's going to show her the world. And Milksop is like, okay, cool, I can get on board with that. And so this play technically happens in like 3 acts, even though it is a short play. I would say look at them more as like scenes. So that's the end of Act 1. Act 2 opens with Christina and Marva talking about Milksop. And Christina is like, he seems really cool, but he talks about all this stuff, and I have no idea what he's talking about. He's speaking to me in French, and I can't even read Russian. Like... And Marva was just like, oh girl, bless her heart.
Bless her heart. And it's so unfair to do. And this is an aristocratic woman doing this to her grandchild too. And this is rough.
It's also hilarious because it's like, you know, I know from general Russian studies that like the speaking of French in the Russian court was like the number one way to flex how worldly and how high class and how smart you are. And so it's really funny that this poor girl is just like, I don't know, why are you speaking to me in French? We live in Russia. Like, it's just a perfect example of like, even as a high class woman, how much she has been prevented from being able to even just like know how to express herself.
Right. And again, it really kind of gives for me that hidden agenda to lock her away. You know, it's giving kind of like Into the Woods, the witch with Rapunzel.
Oh, definitely.
Because if the language of the elite Russian society is French, and she's illiterate and she can't speak or understand French, she's not going to be able to be at court or be among the elite, which is going to limit her opportunities, especially on the marriage market.
So Marva's like, listen, Christina, baby, don't worry. We're all going to make it so that this is going to be a good match for you. I think this is a good idea. She basically tells Christina to just go chill out in her other room because we don't want the bitter old lady brigade to know that Christina has been talking to Milksop. So the moment that Christina leaves the room, Milksop comes in and he's flipping out because he was just in the room with all of the bitter old lady brigade and they were going in on him and Mr. Not Shallow for laughing at Mrs. Marvel for the whole cricket thing. And basically now the bitter old ladies were like, all right, you don't think that was real? Like, okay, now you get out of the house. We don't want you here anymore. You're not going to marry Christina. We're not going to let that happen. Get out. We want you to leave. And so the guys are like, well, now everything's kerflucked. We're done. And Marva's like, okay, no worries. Remember the money thing. So she's like, we're going to get Tatler on her own and we're going to turn her over to our side. And if we can get her on our side, then she'll be able to get Sanctimonious, who's her sister, on our side. So Tatler comes into the room and is like, why are y'all still here? We told you to leave. And the boys start being like, oh my God, you're so young and you're so pretty and you're such a cool lady. Like, how do you stay so cool? And that basically brings Tatler to start reminiscing about her youthful days when everything was better and you could party nonstop and people weren't trying to take advantage of each other like they do now, which is like an interesting turnaround, right? Because there's a lot of lamenting in this play about the current state of things, relatable, and about how the times when, specifically the old ladies were younger, the world was full of so much more promise. What I think is the most interesting part about that with this play is that it's this pattern of the old lamenting the loss of newness and excitement and this feeling of trust and safety in the world, when it's like, you are the one who is taking that away. You are responsible for your own unhappiness because you're squandering the joy of those around you instead of leaning into celebration. I think Nannuccio is very much doing the same thing, just from a less like whining about it angle. He's more like, I'm just gonna take all that I can get for me, and that's gonna make me happy. Which is just something super interesting. So Tatler comes around and is like, okay, I guess you guys are cool, so I'll speak to my sister about restarting the engagement. And they're all like, but Mrs. Marvel is still in the room. How are we going to get rid of her? And so Marva gets all of the bitter old lady brigade and Christina in a room together. And Tatler is talking about how Christina should get married. And Mrs. Marvel is like, no, I hate relationships. Like, this shouldn't happen. And she goes on this brief tirade about all the marriages that she's personally broken up.
Jesus.
Yeah, because she's bored and single and decides that she hates love. And that's, again, really funny. Another example of, unhappiness breeds unhappiness. So she starts complaining about her own son, who she has done a similar thing to her son as Sanctimonious has done to Christina, where she's locked him away to protect him from the world, but it's made him so that he basically can't get married to anybody, because anytime they try to introduce him to somebody, it just doesn't work out. Eventually, Mrs. Marvel leaves because of another superstitious thing that happens, and she's like, I gotta go out of the house, so she runs out. And in this space, Tatler convinces Madame Sanctimonious to give Christina to Mr. Milksop. And finally, after all of this, she agrees, everybody's like, yay, there's gonna be a wedding, and that's the end of the play.
It's so fun. And, I think when I first read it, I love that the smartest person in the room is the person who has the lowest social status, which is Marva.
Yes.
She really is. And she kind of moves people around. It really shows this sort of grounded wisdom where she's able to teach people how to not be intimidated by these women who are forces of nature, but kind of play their agendas against themselves and their weaknesses. So, it's just well done. It's super smart, which of course we wouldn't expect anything less from the Tsarina. So,
oh no, most certainly not.
History.
And that's the thing about Catherine the Great that I've always loved. I mean, I come from a Russian family, so I had a passion for Russian history when I was younger, and I kind of idolized Catherine the Great a little bit, partially because I just thought it was so cool that there was this woman empress who really seemed to run shit seriously. The more that I've learned about her, the more I've come to really just think that she's amazing. So she was originally actually a German princess, and she was born on August 21st, 1729, a Leo Virgo cusp, which is, I think, telling. So she was invited to the Russian court in 1745, at which point she took on the name Katerina or Catherine. So she was married to this duke who took the throne as Peter III in 1761, but Peter was deposed and murdered through Catherine's own orchestration. Way to go. Then she takes over the throne, and she ruled Russia from 1762 to 1796. Now, the thing that really defined Catherine's role as a ruler and a monarch was her patronization of the arts. She really encouraged free exchange of secular social ideas, and part of this was all of her own creativity. She founded a literary journal called All Sorts in 1769, which was a satirical magazine that featured essays and letters and critiqued social vices and was all about getting the people to think and engage in debate with each other about the issues at the time. She had other writers submit and join in this literary journal, and all of this interaction with other writers and creativity influenced her own writing. She wrote a lot of stuff. She wrote operas, she wrote fairy tales, she wrote novels. And what's really exciting, especially about her operas, was that she really worked to include Russian folk traditions and peasant songs. So when you mentioned Marva having the most knowledge of anybody in the place, the person with the lowest class, it's very clear, I think, from Catherine's creative pursuits that she saw the connection between the upper and the lower classes and was very, I think, invested in breaking those barriers. So, unfortunately, as often happens, there was a rebellion in 1773, and then the French Revolution happened in 1789, and this led Catherine to push towards a more conservative rule, which is interesting whenever we turn towards conservatism in political strife. The first thing that rulers will crack down on is artistic expression, which is really a shame given all of her previous support of this. But I think it's also just an example of that. People in power will support what maintains their power. She famously did not die of the horse, as, you know, is the fable. She died of a stroke in 1796, and she was succeeded by her son Paul, who took over the throne after her. She's clearly had a continued and long-living legacy.
And what's interesting, and you can even see it when we study later periods of Russian drama, was sort of French influence, particularly the neoclassical theater influence in the Tsarina. Even before her reign, there was this holding up of the French style as sort of the ideal style, but she really promulgated it. And the main principles of like neoclassical drama would be like the unities of time, place, and action, decorum, which would be, you know, the way I tell it to students is the bad guys got to get got at the end of the play. You cannot have the bad guys win at the end of it. And so, and she really looked at, you know, commedia française, and that served as a model for state-sponsored theater. And, you know, she would bring Voltaire to court. And to, you know, your point too, she's sort of cunning, a sniper from the side. Get
her husband off so that she can rule the country.
And so she corresponded with Voltaire, but she was kind of using him as kind of like press agents. She's basically like, you know, we're so cosmopolitan, we're so with it. I communicate with Voltaire and everything like that, but sort of press agents for her kind of consolidation of power and for Russian expansion in Europe. And this time in Europe is a significant period for like absolutism, and it makes its way in Britain. And then, of course, when she feels threatened, as you mentioned, she definitely leans more into absolutism and maybe not as into the Enlightenment principles.
It's really easy to, you know, stand on those ideals until they begin to come at a cost to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, in a perfect world, you're thinking you're doing it for the good of the people, because she probably, you know, she didn't have a lot of respect for her husband. And so she probably saw this is what it looks like when someone's really not taking control. So, Exactly. But this is it's just a smart, wise piece. And it's really just was so fun to read in general if I hadn't known that Catherine wrote it, but knowing that too made it really amazing.
Yeah, because the other thing that I think is so fun about this is that it's like, this is the Queen of Russia writing this play. Like, I can't help but imagine that she saw a Mrs. Tatler, a Mrs. Sanctimonious, and a Mrs. Marvel running around in her court and was like, oh God, I'm gonna write a play about these bitches. Like, you know, that same thing as what we were talking about with Nannuccio, where it's a comedy, and you're watching it and you're like, oh my god, these people are so silly. And then like 2 or 3 days later, you're like, wait a minute, is this play about us?
Yeah.
And it's
exactly.
like, yeah, girl, it is, because I can imagine, especially because she was so pro these Enlightenment ideals, I can imagine that this idea of older, richer, more conservative upper classes versus younger, more liberal and free people coming into conflict with one another, and the older classes trying to shut it down rather than leaning into letting beautiful things happen. So I am going to read my favorite quote now, which comes from Marva. She has this great monologue at the end of the play where she says, here's how our century is going. We condemn, we judge, we mock. We speak with spit of everyone and everything, but what we don't see is that we ourselves deserve laughter and condemnation. Mm-hmm. When our own prejudices displace common sense, our own vices are hidden from us.
Beautiful. Mic drop. Yeah. Yeah. It's so wise. And actually, I mean, you can apply to this moment in the United States. Yeah. So it's such a timeless quote. Yeah.
That was one of the things about this play that struck me the most was I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm reading about like the little big brigades in the Republican households these days. I don't know. It's all that anyone wants to like talk about nowadays is like, oh, in times like these. And I'm like, yeah. It's like, you know?
I would almost guarantee you that same scenario would happen, especially if Christina were like an LGBTQ character. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, most certainly.
If she were gender expansive, that trying to clip that person, thwart them, keep them isolated or whatever. I can just rattle off 20 households that I know kind of operate like that. And it's so, I mean, this is a little bit of a side, and I might be coming from left field with that, but so it's a little tricky that all of the antagonists in this place, to contrast a little bit with Nannuccio, in all these times, the antagonists are all female. And the people who are misusing power the most are female. So if I were going to remake it in the 21st century US, and especially I would place it down south and I'd make Christina an LGBTQ character. And it's the same in the 21st century that it was during this time too, which is that a lot of times only in the domestic sphere could these women actually realize power, and sometimes when they got it, they really abused it. So, you know, Sanctimonious has power over her servants and has power over Christina, but she can't vote.
She can't vote, she can't remarry because she's too old.
Yeah. And you still see that a lot too, where you see people who are frustrated, but they don't realize that they are frustrated because these systems are not really like allowing them to fully realize power in an external world. And so they over dominate this internal world, you know, this domestic sphere.
As a way to get some kind of control back in their lives. It's also, I think, what you see in Mrs. Marvel with all of her superstitions. Like, you know, it's like, was there a cricket in the room? I don't know, but she's going to make everybody get up and move, all because of her. And it's, you know, very look at me, and I think also like what if you just, you know, if you just paid attention to people sometimes? I mean, the people who talk the most are listened to the least, but why are they talking so much?
Yeah.
Because they don't think anybody's going to hear them.
Right. And they want to have influence and they need to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of This is a Classic, the Expand the Canon podcast. If you believe in the importance of expanding the canon, please give us a 5-star review and subscribe to this podcast.
And then hit the share button and forward it along to a friend, colleague, professor, or your stepdad.
Yes, the stepdad who's hiding your dowry so he can marry a younger woman. To make it easy to find, read, and produce these plays, you can sign up and subscribe to expandthecanon.com.
For info on what's next, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or join our mailing list. You can also support this effort by buying some Expand the Canon merch.
Yeah, and you can brag to your friends about how you're changing the future of classics.
And reading and producing these plays.
You can reach out to us and message us about how to partner on them.
Or you can straight up just donate to us. Money is the thing that makes all these efforts possible. We don't have any children to give dowries to, So I promise we will not be squandering the resources.
Yes. Yes. And if we did, we would pay the dowries and then we would also expand the canon.
Exactly. Pay the dowry,
Yeah.
expand the canon. You can donate to us directly on our website at expandthecanon.com.
Perfection. Well, again, I'm Teresa Cox.
And I'm Gagarin. And goodbye.
Goodbye. It was so fun. Yay.
Yay.